Across the ancient lands of the Middle East, the Euphrates River is quietly revealing what centuries of water once concealed. As the waters retreat, sealed tunnels, forgotten cities, strange statues, and unexplained sounds are surfacing at the same time the world is experiencing floods, extreme storms, and unsettling global changes. Are these isolated discoveries, or pieces of a much larger story still unfolding? In this video, we will connect the clues step by step and explore what they could mean. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us until the end as we examine every sign together today with attention. The first sign does not arrive with noise or spectacle. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed, as the water level along the Euphrates slowly retreats. What was once hidden beneath flowing currents begins to emerge: cracked riverbeds, exposed stone formations, and openings that had not seen daylight for generations. Locals describe stretches of land that, only months earlier, lay completely submerged, now revealing dark cavities carved into the earth. Some of these openings resemble natural erosion at first glance, yet others appear far more deliberate: stair-like descents cut into rock, symmetrical passageways, and sealed chambers whose surfaces look shaped rather than broken. These structures raise a question that echoes across the region. Were these spaces created by nature, or were they constructed long ago for a purpose that has since been forgotten? Archaeological teams working near newly exposed sections of the riverbank have reported tunnel-like formations that do not connect to known settlements, trade routes, or burial complexes. Instead, they appear isolated, positioned in places where access would have been difficult, even in ancient times. Heavy stone slabs, metal-like fixtures, and layered sediment covering the entrances suggest that these areas were not only abandoned, but intentionally closed. Whether these closures were meant to protect what lay inside, or to prevent entry from the outside, remains unknown. Yet the symbolism is difficult to ignore. As the river that once concealed these locations diminishes, the barriers themselves are becoming visible again, standing as silent reminders that something was once considered important enough to seal. One ancient verse often associated with this region reads, "Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." Revelation 9:14. Regardless of interpretation, the imagery is striking: something restrained, something waiting, and a moment in time when concealment gives way to exposure. Today, as the Euphrates continues to recede, the landscape seems to be doing exactly that, revealing, layer by layer, what history once kept hidden beneath the water. If the first sign is the quiet retreat of water, the second is the sudden moment when water returns with overwhelming force. Along sections of the Euphrates basin, residents have described flash floods that appear with little warning, transforming dry ground into violent currents within minutes. Roads that seemed stable hours earlier become submerged pathways, and vehicles left unattended are quickly carried away by fast-moving water. What unsettles witnesses most is not only the power of these floods, but the speed at which they unfold. There is often no gradual rise, no slow transition that allows time to prepare. Instead, the shift happens almost instantly, turning ordinary landscapes into scenes of urgency and confusion. Thousands of miles away, similar patterns have been observed in parts of the United States, where sudden flooding events have overwhelmed drainage systems and isolated entire communities before emergency teams could arrive. Different continents, different climates, and different infrastructures, yet the experience reported by those affected sounds strikingly similar. Water moving faster than human reaction. These events remind observers that water does not always announce its arrival. Sometimes it waits until preparation feels unnecessary, then moves with a force that reshapes everything in its path. A well-known biblical reflection on the days of Noah describes a generation continuing daily life until the flood arrived unexpectedly, not because the signs were invisible, but because they were underestimated. The parallel is not about predicting identical events. It is about understanding how quickly stability can change when warning signs are ignored. Moments like these encourage a simple but important response awareness. If you find this investigation meaningful, take a moment to like the video and continue watching as we connect the next piece of the unfolding picture together. After the floodwaters receded along parts of the Euphrates region, what remained was not only damaged land and scattered debris, but also something far older, small objects buried for centuries beneath layers of soil and sediment. In one area, a collection of ancient gold coins was discovered, preserved almost perfectly despite the passage of time. Each coin had once represented security, value, and the hope of a future return. Whoever hid them likely believed that the dangers surrounding them would eventually pass, that the moment of crisis would be temporary, and that one day they would come back to reclaim what they had carefully protected. Yet history tells a different ending. The owner never returned. Empires shifted. Wars came and went. Generations passed. And the treasure remained untouched until nature itself uncovered it. What makes such discoveries unsettling is not the financial worth of the gold, but the silent message they carry. Wealth can survive disasters, even when the people who depended on it cannot. The coins remained intact, but the plans built around them disappeared. In moments of sudden upheaval, whether flood, conflict, or collapse, what people rely on most reveals its true strength. Gold cannot stop rising water. It cannot delay sudden events, and it cannot restore time once it is gone. The discovery becomes less about archaeology and more about reflection. When stability disappears quickly, what truly remains dependable? Across centuries, hidden treasures uncovered by natural forces continue to tell the same quiet story. What people trust for safety often lasts longer than they do, yet cannot save them when the decisive moment arrives. In a newly exposed cave system near the upper reaches of the Euphrates, explorers encountered a phenomenon that felt strangely out of place. Deep inside passages that had remained sealed for generations, ice began forming along the walls and floor, thickening into solid layers that partially blocked entryways. The cave interior, once submerged beneath flowing water, now held pockets of cold air, intense enough to freeze moisture into expanding sheets of frost. Observers described the atmosphere as unusually still, as though the space had been preserved rather than abandoned. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. What had once been hidden beneath water now seemed locked beneath ice. At nearly the same time, regions far from the Middle East experienced unusually severe winter conditions. Several areas reported record snowfall, prolonged freezing temperatures, and storms powerful enough to halt transportation and disrupt daily life. While extreme weather events occur throughout history, the striking element was the contrast. Frozen interiors appearing in newly opened underground spaces, while distant nations faced some of the harshest seasonal conditions in years. Together, these developments created a shared impression that environmental patterns were shifting in ways both visible and unexpected. Cold has always carried symbolic meaning across cultures, representing preservation, pause, or restraint. When ice forms in places long concealed, it does more than change the physical environment. It alters how people perceive the moment they are living in. Newly opened spaces becoming sealed again, not by stone but by freezing conditions, create a sense that nature itself is revealing and restraining at the same time. The cave remains open, yet partially closed once more, as though the process of uncovering hidden places is unfolding step by step rather than all at once. High on the slopes near Mount Ararat lies a formation that has drawn global attention for decades. A long, curved structure whose outline closely resembles the dimensions described for Noah's Ark. From a distance, it appears almost too symmetrical to ignore, stretching across the mountainside like the imprint of something that once rested there. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have suggested layered internal patterns beneath the rock, features that some researchers believe resemble structural compartments rather than random geological formations. While debate continues over whether the formation is natural or artificial, its presence continues to provoke reflection because of where it is located and what it appears to resemble. The story of the flood has always been more than a historical narrative. It is remembered as a moment when warning and rescue existed side by side. The ark represented preparation before the waters rose, not after. Today, the structure remains motionless on the mountainside, yet each new examination renews the same enduring question. If past generations were given signs before decisive events, would our generation recognize them in time? Stay with us as we continue examining the next piece, where discoveries along the riverbanks begin to reveal symbols that many had never expected to see again. As sections of the riverbank gradually emerged from beneath the retreating waters, observers began noticing stone statues partially buried in mud and sediment. These figures were not arranged like temple monuments or ceremonial guardians. Instead, they appeared scattered, tilted, and half-hidden, as though intentionally placed where they would eventually disappear beneath shifting layers of soil. Their forms were unusual humanoid shapes with extended wings, yet marked by animal-like features that made them difficult to associate with known religious iconography. Even more puzzling was the absence of inscriptions. No names, no dedications, and no symbolic markings that clearly connected them to any established tradition. Ancient societies rarely created statues without purpose, and objects lacking identification often raise more questions than those with clear explanations. Some historians suggest these figures may have represented protective spirits, mythological beings, or symbolic warnings tied to local beliefs now lost to time. Others believe the statues were intentionally relocated or buried during periods of conflict, perhaps to conceal cultural artifacts from destruction. Whatever their origin, the timing of their reappearance, surfacing only after water levels dropped significantly, has drawn renewed attention. When images carved centuries ago re-emerge at the same moment as tunnels, ruins, and other hidden structures, they contribute to a growing sense that layers of forgotten history are returning to visibility together rather than in isolation. In archaeological zones near the ancient region of Babylon, excavations have uncovered damaged artifacts that reveal a different kind of mystery. Rather than being completely destroyed, many clay tablets appear intentionally altered, inscriptions scratched away, while the physical tablet remains intact. This selective damage suggests an effort not to eliminate the object itself, but to remove the information it once carried. Nearby, researchers have also identified narrow corridors and chambers that do not align with residential or ceremonial architecture. These passageways seem to have been constructed with a different purpose, perhaps storage, containment, or controlled access, yet their original function remains uncertain. The discovery of skeletal remains arranged without traditional burial practices adds another layer of complexity. Instead of individualized graves or ceremonial markers, some remains appear grouped in systematic patterns, suggesting processes that historians are still attempting to interpret. While natural explanations such as conflict, relocation, or emergency burial remain possible, the broader pattern, altered records, sealed corridors, and concealed remains illustrates how history is shaped, not only by what survives, but also by what is deliberately obscured. As each excavation progresses, new fragments of the ancient world continue to surface, reminding observers that the past is often far less silent than it appears. During periods of extreme drought, sections of ancient settlements long submerged beneath reservoirs connected to the Euphrates basin have temporarily resurfaced, and the sight is far more unsettling than historians expected. Walls, towers, and preserved architectural layouts belonging to civilizations more than 3,000 years old have emerged not as scattered ruins, but as recognizable city patterns, streets, defensive lines, and building foundations that appear almost frozen in time. Archaeologists describe moments when the morning light first touches these structures, revealing entire districts that had not been seen since antiquity. The exposed remains display advanced construction techniques, layered defensive planning, and carefully organized urban zones, all of which reflect the sophistication of societies that once thrived along the river. Fragments of painted plaster still cling to interior walls, faint colors surviving centuries beneath water, while doorways and staircases remain sharply defined, as though abandoned in haste rather than erased by time. What makes these discoveries especially striking is not only their historical value, but the mysterious rhythm in which they appear suddenly, often briefly, before slipping back beneath rising reservoir waters. Entire cities can remain unseen for decades, then surface for only a few months, as though history itself is opening a narrow window and closing it again before the world has fully understood what it has seen. Researchers frequently work against the clock, racing to document structures before they vanish once more beneath the waterline. Locals sometimes describe the moment of disappearance as strangely quiet. The same waters that once concealed the cities slowly reclaim them, leaving only faint ripples where entire streets had stood weeks earlier. This recurring cycle of concealment and exposure reinforces a growing sense across the Euphrates region that the land is revealing its buried memories in stages, not all at once, as if the past is being released, layer by layer. At nearly the same time, in several locations near the river and in distant parts of the world, residents have reported hearing deep, resonant sounds that seem to emerge without any visible origin. Some describe the phenomenon as a distant metallic hum, others as a prolonged horn-like vibration that lingers in the air long after the initial sound fades. Witnesses often report an unusual sensation accompanying the noise, not just hearing it, but feeling it as a faint pressure in the chest or a subtle vibration underfoot. What makes these accounts particularly unsettling is their consistency across different regions. The sounds frequently occur under calm skies, without aircraft, storms, or seismic activity that could easily explain them. Audio analysts have suggested possibilities ranging from atmospheric pressure shifts to distant industrial resonance, yet in many recorded cases, no clear source has been confirmed. Throughout history, unexplained sounds have always drawn attention because hearing something without seeing its origin creates a deeper sense of uncertainty than visual anomalies alone. People instinctively look upward, scanning the sky or toward the horizon, searching for movement that never appears. In several reports, the sound seems to fade gradually rather than stop abruptly, as though it is traveling across vast distances before dissolving into silence. Whether these tones result from rare environmental interactions or still unknown natural processes, they contribute to an atmosphere of quiet tension, leaving observers with an open question rather than a final explanation. Are these isolated acoustic anomalies, or early signals of broader environmental shifts still unfolding beneath the surface? Along newly exposed sections of riverbank, erosion has also revealed unusual impressions preserved in hardened sediment shapes that some observers describe as oversized footprints pressed deep into layers of ancient ground. At first glance, many appear indistinct, yet certain impressions display remarkable depth and symmetry, suggesting that they were formed under considerable pressure long ago. Geological teams caution that natural erosion can occasionally create footprint-like patterns, yet several formations remain difficult to classify with certainty, prompting further study using scanning and sediment analysis techniques. Some impressions extend across multiple layers of rock, hinting that the surfaces once formed part of landscapes far older than the present riverbed. These discoveries remind researchers that landscapes are not static archives, but living geological systems that occasionally reveal preserved moments from distant eras. Layers of sediment function like sealed pages of an ancient record, and when drought, erosion, or flooding alters the environment, those pages briefly become visible again. What is emerging along the Euphrates today is not a single isolated discovery, but a sequence of exposures, cities resurfacing, unusual acoustic phenomena being reported, and ancient impressions appearing where flowing water once concealed everything. Together, these events give the region an unusual sense of movement, as though the ground itself is gradually uncovering a deeper narrative that has waited thousands of years to be seen again. As sections of land once hidden beneath the waters of the Euphrates become accessible, exploration teams are beginning to uncover vast underground cave networks stretching beneath the region. Some of these systems appear naturally formed, shaped by thousands of years of erosion, yet others display features that suggest deliberate human modification: smooth passageways where rough stone would normally remain, carved openings that resemble controlled entrances, and chamber-like spaces reinforced by stacked rock formations. The deeper researchers look, the more complex these networks appear. In several surveyed areas, scanning technology has revealed hollow corridors extending far beyond the visible entrances, descending into darkness at depths that were previously unimagined. The atmosphere inside many of these caves differs sharply from the world above. Temperatures remain unusually stable, sound travels in distorted echoes, and in some sections, electronic equipment has briefly malfunctioned, possibly due to mineral density or electromagnetic interference within the surrounding rock. Such conditions create an environment where time itself seems slowed. Objects left untouched underground can remain preserved for centuries, protected from sunlight, weather, and human activity. Preliminary explorations have already identified fragments of tools, pottery remains, and carved markings whose origins are still under study. Yet in several deeper corridors, explorers report encountering sealed stone partitions and blocked passageways, suggesting that certain sections were intentionally closed at some point in history. Whether these barriers were designed for protection, concealment, or containment remains uncertain, but their presence adds a layer of mystery that continues to draw attention. With each newly mapped chamber, the subterranean landscape reveals itself not as a simple network of caves, but as a hidden extension of ancient human interaction with the land, one that may still hold discoveries capable of reshaping historical understanding. Individually, each discovery along the Euphrates exposed tunnels, resurfacing cities, unexplained acoustic phenomena, and newly mapped cave systems can be examined as an isolated development. Together, however, they form a pattern that is difficult to overlook. Environmental shifts are uncovering what flowing water concealed for centuries, and with each change in the landscape, new fragments of the past step briefly into view. Entire structures emerge, are studied, and sometimes disappear again beneath rising waters, creating the impression that history itself is revealing its contents in stages rather than all at once. At the same time, technological advances allow researchers to document these appearances more precisely than ever before, capturing details that earlier generations would never have had the chance to observe. Periods of transition in natural environments often coincide with moments of historical rediscovery, but the scale and frequency of recent findings have drawn unusual global attention. Archaeological exposures, strange environmental sounds, and underground networks appearing within the same general time frame give many observers the sense that multiple layers of history and geology are being uncovered simultaneously. Whether interpreted purely through environmental science, historical inquiry, or broader symbolic reflection, the convergence of these developments marks a moment that invites careful observation rather than quick conclusions. As new information continues to surface, the unfolding story of the Euphrates region serves as a reminder that the ground beneath familiar landscapes still holds vast chapters of human and natural history, chapters that may only now be beginning to open. If you find this ongoing investigation meaningful, take a moment to like the video, subscribe for upcoming explorations, and leave a comment such as "I am watching closely" to share your perspective as we continue examining what emerges next.